My name is Clara. I never thought I would be sitting here one day, telling my story like this, a story filled with kindness, fear, and a pain so deep that it tore my life apart. I was just an ordinary girl. Simple dreams, a small apartment, a heart full of hope. I became a nurse because I loved helping people. I believed that if I could heal someone's pain, maybe the world would become a little better, a little brighter. Every morning, I would wake up before sunrise, tie my hair back, put on my white uniform, and walk to the hospital. It wasn't a big hospital, just a small one on the edge of the city. But for me, it was my second home. The smell of medicines, the sound of monitors beeping, the cries of newborn babies, the quiet prayers of families in waiting rooms, it was all part of my life. I treated every patient like family. Old men who came alone, children with fevers, mothers worried about their babies. I smiled at everyone. I believed in kindness. But then he came. It was a rainy evening. The sky was dark, thunder rolling in the distance. I remember because I was standing near the window, watching the rain hit the glass, when the ambulance doors opened. The nurses ran toward it. There was shouting, hurried footsteps, and then I saw him. A man. Wounded. Blood everywhere. His face pale, eyes half closed. He had been stabbed or shot. I wasn't sure. The paramedics said something about him being dangerous, wanted by the police. I froze. For a second, I didn't know whether to feel fear or pity. But then my training took over. He was a patient. My patient. Whatever he had done outside these walls didn't matter in that moment. My job was to save him. I rushed to his side, holding the stretcher as they wheeled him in. His eyes flickered open for a moment, and for the first time, I saw them clearly. Sharp, cold, like he had seen too much of life, too much darkness. "Don't let me die," he whispered. His voice was rough, weak. I didn't answer. I just held his wrist, checking his pulse, calling for the doctor. Hours passed in the operating room. I stood outside, watching the red light above the door, listening to the storm outside. Something about that night felt heavy, like the air itself was warning me. When they finally brought him out, alive but unconscious, I felt relief. He would live, at least for now. I didn't know then that saving his life would destroy mine. The next morning, I walked into the hospital with the same routine smile on my face, but something felt different. He was in room 6. The man from last night. Still unconscious, machines keeping him alive, his chest rising and falling slowly. I stood near the door for a long time just watching. His name was written on the chart, Adrian Black. I whispered it softly to myself. Adrian. The police came in that afternoon. They asked questions, told the doctors that Adrian was a dangerous man, wanted for crimes they didn't fully explain. All I caught were fragments, gangs, shooting, escaped. I should have felt afraid. But when he finally opened his eyes 2 days later, all I saw was pain. Real, raw pain. The kind that makes a person human, no matter what they've done. Water, he croaked. I held the glass for him. My hands were steady, but my heart wasn't. He drank slowly, then looked straight into my eyes. For a moment, everything else faded. The noise of the hospital, the footsteps in the hallway, even the rain outside. Why did you save me? He asked. His voice was soft, almost broken. Because I'm a nurse, I said simply. It's my job. He didn't reply. He just kept staring like he was trying to read my soul. Days passed. He started talking a little more. Nothing personal, nothing about his past, just simple things. Food. Weather. The pain in his side. But every time I looked at him, I felt like there was a storm behind his eyes. One evening, when the hospital was quiet and the sun was setting, he said something I'll never forget. You shouldn't be near me, Clara, he murmured. I ruin everything I touch. I didn't know what to say. I just changed his bandages in silence, my hands trembling slightly, because deep inside, I already knew he was right. Something about him scared me, not the kind of fear that makes you run. No, it was the kind that pulls you in, even when you know you shouldn't go closer. The days kept passing, but Adrian stayed in room 6 like a storm waiting to break. Every time I entered, I felt his eyes follow me. Not with warmth, not even with anger. It was something else, something I couldn't name. Sometimes he talked in his sleep, words that made no sense, names, places, maybe memories. I stood by his bed more than once, listening to the whispers of a man haunted by things I didn't understand. One night, I brought him tea. It wasn't allowed, but I did it anyway. He smiled for the first time. Just a small curve of his lips, nothing more. But it felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. You shouldn't be kind to me, he said softly. Why? I asked. Because kindness doesn't last around me. I laughed lightly, trying to break the tension. Maybe it will this time. But he didn't laugh. He just looked at me with those dark, unreadable eyes. That same night, 2 policemen came to the hospital again. They didn't know I was outside the room when they spoke to the doctor. We have to move him soon, one said. Too many people want him dead. Dead. The word froze my heart. I couldn't sleep that night. The next morning, Adrian asked me to sit with him. Do you ever feel like your life isn't really yours? He asked suddenly. His question caught me off guard. Sometimes, I admitted. But why do you ask? He stared at the ceiling. Because mine was stolen a long time ago. There was so much pain in his voice that I didn't know what to say. So I just sat there in silence, feeling his sadness fill the room like smoke. I remember that night so clearly. The air outside was heavy with rain, the kind that tapped against the hospital windows like fingers begging to be let in. Adrian hadn't spoken much that day. He just watched the rain with empty eyes. Something in him felt far away. I walked into his room with his medicines. You didn't eat, I said softly. I'm not hungry, he replied. His voice was low, almost like he was speaking to himself. I sat beside his bed, feeling that same strange heaviness around him. "Adrian," I whispered, "are you afraid of something?" For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he turned his face toward me. "Afraid?" He gave a short, bitter laugh. "No. I think the world should be afraid of me." Those words sent a shiver through me. "Why do you say that?" I asked. He looked at the rain again. "Because when you lose everything, when you have nothing left to love, you become something else. Something the world should fear." His words stayed in my heart like cold metal. That same evening, I saw a man outside the hospital. He stood near the gate, smoking under the dim streetlight. I had never seen him before. His eyes followed me as I walked to the bus stop after my shift. Something about him felt wrong. The next day, Adrian was restless. He kept asking for a phone, for paper, for anything to write on. "Please, Clara," he said. "Just get me a pen." I didn't understand why, but I brought him one. He wrote something quickly, folded the paper, and gave it to me. "Keep this safe," he whispered. "If something happens to me, give it to the police." My hands trembled as I hid the paper in my pocket. That night, the same man I had seen before came into the hospital. I saw him in the corridor, speaking to one of the guards. His eyes were cold, searching. I felt a storm coming, and I was right. That night, I can still hear it in my head. The footsteps, the voices, the storm outside. It was close to midnight when the power went out in the hospital. The long corridors went dark, except for the red emergency lights glowing faintly like dying embers. I was in Adrian's room. He was sitting on the bed, tense, his hands clenched so tightly I could see the veins in his arms. "Clara," he whispered, "they're here." My heart stopped. "Who?" I asked. He looked at the door, his eyes sharp, alive in a way I had never seen before. "The people who want me dead." Before I could speak, we heard the echo of boots in the hallway. Slow, heavy, coming closer. Adrian stood up. "You need to leave," he said firmly. "I'm not leaving you," I whispered back, shaking my head. His eyes softened for a moment. "You've been the only light in this hell," he said. "But if you stay, you'll get hurt." I wanted to argue, but then the door handle turned. Everything froze. The man I had seen outside before stepped in. His face was hard, shadowed by the dim light. Two others followed him, silent, cold-eyed. Adrian stood between them and me. "Finally," the man said. His voice was deep, rough, carrying the weight of something old, something full of hate. "You should have finished me when you had the chance," Adrian replied. And then it happened so fast. A flash of metal, a loud crash. Someone shouted. The next thing I knew, Adrian pushed me toward the corner. "Run, Clara," he shouted. But I couldn't move. My legs felt like stone as I saw one of the men swing a knife. Adrian caught his arm, the two of them struggling in the dark. There was blood. I couldn't even tell whose it was. One of the attackers turned toward me. His eyes were like ice. He started walking slowly in my direction. I backed away, my breath shaking. Adrian roared, slamming one man against the wall. "Go!" he screamed at me. But before I could escape, before I could even breathe, a gunshot tore through the air. Adrian fell. I screamed so loud it felt like my chest was breaking. He hit the ground, blood spreading fast beneath him. The attackers ran. Sirens blared in the distance. I crawled to Adrian, my hands shaking, pressing against the wound, begging him to stay. "Don't you dare leave me," I whispered, tears falling on his face. His hand found mine weak, trembling. "Clara," he breathed, voice breaking. "I'm sorry." And then nothing. His hand slipped away. The storm outside raged on, but inside that room, there was only silence. The kind of silence that stays with you forever. I don't remember how long I sat there, on the cold hospital floor, holding Adrian's lifeless hand. The sirens, the footsteps, the chaos outside, it all felt far away, like a dream I couldn't wake up from. Someone came in, doctors, nurses, maybe even police, but I couldn't hear their words. Their voices were muffled, drowned out by the storm inside my head. I was frozen. The only thing I could see was his face, pale, still gone. They tried to pull me away, but I held on to him. "No, no, you can't take him," I whispered, my voice breaking. "He needs me," he promised. But promises mean nothing when death comes. Eventually, they carried him out, and I was left alone in that empty room. I sat in the corner, hugging myself, shivering though the night wasn't cold. It felt like the walls were closing in. Days passed, maybe weeks. I don't know. The police came with questions. Answered them like a ghost, my voice hollow. They caught the men who did it. I thought it would bring me peace. It didn't, because justice doesn't bring back the dead. Every night I closed my eyes, I saw him falling. I heard that gunshot. Sometimes I even heard his voice calling my name in the dark. One evening, I went back to the hospital. The same corridor, the same room, but now it was empty, clean, like nothing had happened. I sat on the bed where he had spent his last days, and I cried. For the man I barely knew, but somehow understood more than anyone else. For the way he smiled when I brought him food. For the way he said my name like it meant something. For the way he died protecting me. People told me to move on. But how do you move on from something that tore your soul apart? I started writing letters to him. Letters he would never read. "Dear Adrian," I wrote, "I saw the first snow today. Remember how you said winter was your favorite season? I hate it now, because it reminds me of the night I lost you." Page after page, I poured my heart out. It was the only way I could breathe. One night, months later, I walked by the river where we had talked once, just once about life, about freedom. The water was calm, moonlight dancing on its surface. I whispered into the cold air, "I hope you're free now, Adrian. I hope wherever you are, there's no pain, no fear, no dark nights like the one that took you away." The wind blew softly, like it was carrying my words somewhere far beyond this world. That was the night I realized some wounds never heal. Some stories never end. They just live inside you forever. People say time heals everything. They lie. Time doesn't heal. It just teaches you how to carry the pain like a heavy stone in your heart. After Adrian was gone, the hospital didn't feel the same. Every corridor whispered his name. Every room carried memories I wanted to forget but couldn't. I tried to keep working. Patients came and went. Smiles returned on faces. Families reunited. But inside me, there was only silence. One evening, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the girl staring back. Her eyes were empty. Her smile was fake. Her hands, the same hands that once saved lives, couldn't even stop one man from dying. I hated that mirror. Sometimes I heard his voice in my dreams. "Clara, don't cry," he said softly. "You have to live. For me." But how do you live when the best part of you died with someone else? Months passed. Seasons changed. Spring came with flowers blooming everywhere. People laughed in the park. Kids ran around with ice creams. I sat on a bench alone, watching life move on like I didn't belong to this world anymore. Then an old woman sat beside me. She looked at me with kind eyes and said, "My husband died 40 years ago. I still talk to him every night." I stared at her. "Does it ever stop hurting?" I asked. She smiled sadly. "No, my dear. But you learn to live around the pain, like flowers growing around broken stones." Her words stayed with me. So I started planting flowers in the small garden behind my house. Every time I planted one, I whispered Adrian's name. Roses, daisies, lilies. Soon the whole garden bloomed with colors, like he was there in every petal. People thought it was beautiful. They didn't know it was my way of breathing again. One day, while watering the garden, a little boy from the neighborhood asked, "Why so many flowers?" I smiled softly. "Because someone I loved is sleeping under the sky, and I want him to have the most beautiful dreams." The boy didn't understand, but that was okay. Years later, yes, years, the pain was still there. But I learned to carry it without breaking every day. I became stronger, not because I wanted to, but because life left me no choice. On Adrian's death anniversary, I visited his grave with a single white rose. I sat there for hours, talking to him about my day, my work, my dreams, like he was listening. Maybe he was. The wind blew gently, carrying away my tears. That night, standing under the stars, I whispered, "I'm still here, Adrian, living, breathing, carrying you in every heartbeat. You're not gone. Not really. And for the first time in years, I felt a small smile on my lips. Because love doesn't die. It just changes shape and lives inside you forever. Years rolled by quietly, silently, like pages of a book turning in the wind. I kept working as a nurse. Faces changed. Lives began and ended in front of me. But every time someone held my hand in pain, I felt Adrian's presence. Because love teaches you empathy. Loss teaches you depth. And I had both. One winter evening, I came home after a long shift. My body was tired, but my heart was calm. I made tea, sat by the window, and watched snowflakes falling slowly, covering the world in white. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. Maybe because grief had slowly turned into something else. Not happiness, not sadness, just peace. I started writing a diary, letters to Adrian. Every night, before sleeping, I wrote one page. Today, a little girl hugged me after her surgery. I wrote one night. She reminded me of you, how you smiled even on your worst days. Another night. Adrian, I planted sunflowers today. They look toward the sun, like I keep looking for you in the stars. Writing made me feel closer to him, like our conversations never stopped. One summer morning, while walking to work, a young nurse joined me. She said softly, "Clara, everyone says you are the kindest person in this hospital. How do you stay so strong?" I looked at her and smiled faintly. "Because life broke me once," I said. "And when you break, you either stay shattered forever, or you learn to hold other people's pieces together." She didn't reply, but I saw tears in her eyes. Time kept moving. My hair turned gray. My hands grew weaker. But the garden behind my house, it kept blooming season after season. Children from the neighborhood played there. Sometimes they asked about the man in the picture frame on my wall. I always said, he was someone who taught me love and how to survive its loss. On my 65th birthday, I visited Adrian's grave again. The sky was full of clouds. I sat there with a basket of flowers, the same ones I planted over the years. "Adrian," I whispered, "I kept living just like you wanted. Maybe soon I'll see you again. Maybe on the other side of the stars." A gentle breeze touched my face like a soft answer. That night, I dreamt of him. He stood under a big oak tree, smiling, looking young and healthy like the day I first met him. "Clara," he said softly, "you did well. You lived. You loved. You healed others. Now rest." And then he held out his hand. The next morning, neighbors found me sleeping peacefully in my chair, diary on my lap, pen still in my hand. I never woke up. At my funeral, the hospital staff, the children from the neighborhood, even strangers came with flowers. They fill my garden with colors just like I once filled it for Adrian. Someone read my diary aloud. A little girl asked, "Was Clara happy in the end?" An old woman replied, "She was, because she carried love even through pain, and love never dies." That was Clara's story, a story of love, loss, and the courage to keep living, even with a broken heart. Because some stories don't end with death. They live in memories. They live in flowers. They live forever.